Good afternoon, Mr. Moore.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bennett.
Where's your boss today?
Mr. Thompson is on vacation, so I'll be standing in for him today. He said this matter was quite urgent.
Good. Please sit down. I'm sure we can manage on our own.
Certainly. I'm very familiar with logistics processes.
Yes, Mr. Moore. We really need to resolve these issues quickly. I would hope that you are aware that we have had to wait for your brake systems on numerous occasions in the last few weeks. In 2 cases, we were almost forced to deliver our elevators late. Now, a weak supply chain poses a real risk to our business, Mr. Moore. That's why I would really like to clarify with you how we can avoid this kind of situation in the future.
Yes, Mr. Bennett, that is always an issue with just-in-time delivery.
Why should that be a problem? It's always worked for us in the past.
Yes. I can definitely see there is some room for adjustment, although admittedly it won't be easy. We produce very complex braking systems and we want to make sure our products are particularly well made. We wouldn't want one of your elevators to go down now, would we? But in all seriousness, we do have experience with situations like this. Agrato is one recent example. They make those tractors.
Yes, I've heard of them.
Well, we helped them out of quite a fix because we delivered too much. At first they thought, gosh, we really don't need this many brakes all at once. But then suddenly demand spiked. They were probably pleased.
What are you saying? You want us to buy even more brakes?
No, not unless your elevators are getting even faster. No, really, I see the potential to avoid 75% of all supply bottlenecks. What do you think?
This isn't making any sense to me, Mr. Moore. Let me make another suggestion. You assign more employees to our orders so you can deliver in a timely fashion. And then we can continue to do business together in the future. What do you think of that, Mr. Moore?
Yes, okay.
Good.
Do you recognize the situation Mr. Moore is facing? You are well prepared, you are convinced of your position, you have good justifications and a lot of professional experience under your belt, but you just can't communicate what you want to say and your discussion partner easily gets their own way. Wouldn't it be nice if you had a blueprint to help you make successful contributions during discussions, especially in contentious, tense situations? A structure that you could follow to ensure that you get straight to the point? Let me tell you something. Such a blueprint exists. The 5-step technique. This technique enables you to formulate your reasoning effectively and concisely, whether in meetings, conversations with customers, presentations, or when talking to the press. The 5-step technique works as follows. You start with a situational lead-in, then follow up with 3 arguments, and finish with a final clause, a kind of incisive summary. Now, you ask yourself whether it all works in practice? At this point, we come back to our example and see how the conversation plays out when Mr. Moore uses the 5-step technique properly.
A weak supply chain poses a real risk to our business, Mr. Moore. That's why I would really like to clarify with you how we can avoid this kind of situation from happening again in the future.
Absolutely, Mr. Bennett. We have already thought about how we can solve this issue internally. We provide you with just-in-time delivery directly to the production line. Of course, with that method, it is extremely difficult to respond to large order fluctuations.
We know this problem well.
Now, imagine you always had a small stockpile of brake systems set aside. This would provide a buffer in the event of a surprise surge in demand. The latest statistics say that 75% of all production failures can be avoided with a small stockpile.
Really?
We recently encountered a very similar situation with a tractor manufacturer. They suddenly had a boom in demand. We never would have been able to cater for it just in time. But we had delivered so much stock to the customer in advance, they were able to keep the production line going without a problem. Now, I propose we send you an additional truck every first Monday of the month to stock your warehouse.
That sounds reasonable. Let's go over the details.
That was much more convincing than the first time, right? You can also apply the 5-step technique in this way. I'll tell you how in detail. First, the situational lead-in. This always has the same function. Pick up the thread of the previous discussion and guide the conversation toward your own topic. There are two kinds of situational lead-ins. We saw the reactive strategy in the example scene. In other words, you wait for the discussion to progress first before making your statement. Only speak after they pass you the ball. For example, when someone asks, "What do you think about the topic?" Or if you're prompted to say something, "Ms. Smith, I'd like to know why you see it that way." You then seize the opportunity and start your well-prepared statement. "I would be happy to tell you, Mr. Carroll. I'm somewhat skeptical about the issue because," and so on. The reactive strategy has one big advantage. You can get an idea of your opponent's opinion first. Especially if it turns out that a conversation is going to be very contentious, you can buy yourself time with this strategy. This allows you to mentally prepare what you want to say, and then, when it's your turn, make a well-thought-out statement. The disadvantage of this method is that you give a less commanding impression. You wait for a prompt, and if things go badly, your turn will never come. In that case, you need the active strategy. You actively try to create the opportunity to talk. For example, by making eye contact, or by using hand gestures. "I'd like to add something here." You can even take advantage of a moment when your opponent pauses to start putting forward your ideas. Of course, this approach does involve certain risks, depending upon the aggressiveness of your intervention. The confrontation may be too much for your conversation partner, and they may become defensive. In this case, you'll have trouble getting through to them with your arguments. It's therefore often a better tactic to let a conversation progress naturally. First, observe how opinions are developing, and once you can better assess the situation, start talking. Don't make your position clear until the situation is under control. If you're dealing with a conversation partner who's skilled in persuasion, or with a manager who has a high status, it would be best to avoid a high-risk situational lead-in entirely. Now we come to the core of your statement, the justifications. This is where the actual persuasion takes place. To do so, we must look at what an effective justification actually is. Let's look more closely at the 4 types of justification.
First of all, there are justifications with a benefit promise. In other words, an answer to the conversation partner's underlying question, "What do I get out of this?" Or in more general terms, "What is the advantage for us?" Imagine a discussion between 2 colleagues from different departments about who should make their junior employees available for 2 special project days. An argument like, "We need the 2 juniors ourselves because everyone in our department has their hands full," would not be a persuasive justification. A better effect is achieved with an argument like this. The topic of the project is closer to your specialist field. If you send your junior employees, they will be able to gather valuable experience, which they will then be able to use to help your department. People are particularly interested in the advantages something offers. This means that the benefit is usually a very strong justification. This should come up in the 5-step technique at least once. Examples and stories are also good justifications. These allow you to illustrate abstract matters and firmly establish them in the mind of the discussion partner. One could, of course, say, "This kind of investment increases your risk of insolvency." That would be a correct justification. However, the following justification has the greater impact. Another entrepreneur who is a friend of mine put 2.5 million into these stocks last year. Now he's bankrupt. Analogies can also be used, like, "Look at the big football teams. They all have their own scouting division. We should be doing something similar and focus more on university marketing to find gifted young talents." A helpful tool is a storytelling journal in which you can collect good stories or comparisons. Figures and factors are also effective justifications. They give an impression of objectivity and can easily be generalized. This means they are particularly useful with conversation partners who are rational and analytical. A business partner may not respond to an emotive example. This is where this statement may be useful. 78% of all companies that have introduced this kind of loyalty discount are financially better off 2 years later. This way, the conversation partner is provoked to give serious thought to what has been said, and the statistics also apply to their situation that cannot be easily dismissed. The fourth and final kind of justification: authorities, quotes, references. Bringing up a good name can lend a position significantly more weight. So making use of some subtle name dropping can be very helpful, like Professor X from the University of XY confirms my theory when he says, Steve Jobs always said. Alternatively, we have already implemented this with great success at company XY. Referencing relevant people or groups increases the perceived competence of the discussion partner. Of course, facts shouldn't simply be plucked out of the air, and one shouldn't exaggerate. Doing so would quickly become dubious.
Choose your justifications from these 4 areas. Start with a benefit justification. That's the best foundation. Then go into more depth with a justification from one of the other areas. You might convince your colleagues with a single memorable example. Finally, sell your point with another benefit justification. A different approach is needed for a customer. After a benefit justification, a customer would prefer to hear an impressive reference followed by a few figures as confirmation. So consider what is important to your conversation partner and create a tailor-made package of justifications for them. Your statement is now almost complete, but it's still missing something decisive: a well-rounded conclusion. The final clause. The final clause sums up your core statement and shows what conclusion you've come to. It can be an appeal, for instance. That's why I believe we should not invest in this marketing concept. Your discussion partner will remember the last part of your statement particularly well. It should therefore be the most important part of your statement. Don't overlap your conclusion with any additional comments. A statement should not last any longer than 30 to 40 seconds in total. That's the optimal time in which someone will give you their full attention. Practice shortening your statement, and don't worry if you're not able to cover all good justifications in a single set of 5 sentences. You'll normally have the opportunity to make multiple statements. As such, it may even be better to spread your top arguments across different groups of 5 sentences. In the following transfer exercise, you'll be able to put what you've just learned about the 5-step technique directly into practice. Good luck.